I want to provide you with a guide for upgrading or downgrading your commander decks. The official Wizards Commander format panel has introduced the bracketing system, a system for aligning decks with your partners around a commander pod. And with them, they introduced Game Changers, a list of 40, give or take, cards that are on a watch list to potentially be banned in the future. But they also, change the game. The presence of these cards in your deck in any quantity means your deck is a minimum bracket 3 deck. And if your deck contains more than 3 Game Changers, then it's a bracket 4 or 5 deck. This system is interesting because it means cards like Jeska's Will, or Bolas's Citadel, or Cyclonic Rift are only going to be found in specific games. But what if your deck that only contains Jace art cards has a Judge Promo Rhystic Study in it? Is that still a bracket 3 deck? So let's take a look at the Game Changers and see what we can do to either replace them or power down your decks, or what they can replace to power up your decks. But before we start, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more deck techs and deck building tips each and every week. As a note, I'm going to skip over the multicolor section of the Game Changers. This section contains only multicolored legends, and if you want to include these as your commander, there's really no substitute for them. Keep on rocking those awesome, powerful legends. Now let's start with Drannith Magistrate. This little stacks creature is a menace in Commander, as he usually prevents you from casting your commander themselves, and is part of a few locks to shut the game down with cards like Knowledge Pool. Usually seen in high power play, he's really on the list to keep him out of the more casual end of the spectrum. So if you want to replace Magistrate, or find a home for him, start with other white stacks pieces. Rather than preventing players from casting their commanders, limit the number of spells they can cast with an Aethersworn Canonist or Archon of Emeria, meaning if someone is casting their commander, at least they aren't casting anything else that turn. Enlightened Tutor is undeniably White's best tutor, used to grab fast mana pieces in CEDH or even just a Soul Ring in casual games. But if you're looking to grab a piece of equipment, then a Steel Shaper's Gift or Open the Armory do the job as well as put it in your hand rather than on top of your library. And if you're looking for an enchantment, then Idyllic Tutor is a fine substitute, albeit a far cry from Enlightened Tutor's versatility. It's a game changer because nothing else comes close to its utility. Serra's Sanctuary is the first land you'll see on the list, being a massive ramp piece for White, provided you can get a load of enchantments into play. For some decks this is simple, and for some decks they must wonder what the big deal is all about. But if you're looking for ramp on a land in White, then there's 3 Tree City or Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. They're your best bets depending on the kind of deck you're building, providing the same or in some cases even better mana generation. This is a very narrow include on the Game Changers list in my opinion, and is one of the more harmless Game Changers. Then there's Smothering Tide, a boogeyman of the format and hands down the easiest card to throw a game out of whack fast. Definitely a justified game changer. If you're looking for this kind of mana or artifact production though, Monologue Tax, Master of Ceremonies, and Smuggler's Share all create multiple treasures each turn cycle. Though not as reliable or oppressive, they certainly ensure White can do more than play 1 land each turn. Trouble in Pairs is the next game changer with the potential to draw you 3 cards each turn. It's White's best card draw engine. So of course it's a game changer. Here, I look to some of White's creature-based card draw like Enduring Innocence, Welcoming Vampire, and Tokasha's Welcome. If you're doing White's thing of making small creatures, these are all ongoing card draw effects that keep your hand full. And if you're making tokens, like with the last entry's cards, then the new Caretaker's Talent is a good include too, drawing you a card on everyone's turn if they break the rules. And of course, Mangara the Diplomat is just Trouble in Pairs on a body and makes a great direct swap in any White deck. Cyclonic Rift is rightly a game changer, as it has ruined many games of Magic, being a one-sided board reset at instant speed, but it's also Blue's best board wipe, so how do we replace it? If you are in mono blue, then Engulf the Shore is a great instant speed board wipe just for creatures, where Filter Out is great for returning everything but creatures to players' hands at instant speed. And if you're okay with Sorcery Speed, then Displacement Wave, Crush of Tentacles, and Consuming Tide are all total board wipes in blue too. But if you're looking for a completely one-sided board wipe, Psych Rift is your only option and only belongs in higher powered games. Then we have Expropriate, a victim of the chaining multiple turns rule of the bracket system. If you're using Expropriate for stealing permanents rather than taking turns, you can make a direct swap with Blatant Thievery. If your goal is to swipe smaller creatures and permanents, then Subjugate the Hobbits or Tempted by the Auric are your best replacements. Then we have the free counterspells of Force of Will and Fierce Guardianship. These are usually seen at higher power levels, but have some relatively common replacements. Force of Negation, another free counterspell, isn't a game changer for instance. And 1-mana hard counters like Swansong, Strict Serenade, and An Offer You Can't Refuse are all just a single mana rather than free and all counter spells as well. Honestly, most decks can do without these free counter spells pretty easily. Next up is Rhystic Study. I'm on the record saying this card is my first ban if I ever get to make decisions, and I still believe it. No other card warps the whole game around it faster. But it also remains Blue's best ongoing card draw, and actually the game's best ongoing card draw. If you are in a creature-based deck though, I'd work in synergistic draw engines like Bident of Thassa, Thopter Spy Network, or Coastal Piracy to draw just as many, or more, cards more often. Kindred Discovery is also a much more impactful draw engine in some decks too, without annoying everyone to death with an endless string of "Will you pay the one?" Thassa's Oracle also makes the Game Changers list due to it being the de facto win condition in higher power games. Its presence on the list ensures it stays there and not in casual games. But if decking yourself is your way to victory, then you're in luck, as Laboratory Maniac and Jace Wielder of Mysteries are both not game changers and both still reward you for emptying your deck. Our first monocolored legend in the list is Urza Lord High Artificer, a menace for not only generating massive amounts of mana, but also free casting spells with said mana, a 1-card enabler and payoff. If you are looking to turn your permanents into mana in blue or any color, then there are a few artifacts that can help in Hairstrung Koto, Honor-Worn Shaku, and Relic of Legends that can all tap creatures or your commanders to make more and more mana. And if the free spells portion are your thing, and you're still artifact heavy, Aetherworks Marvel is here to gain you energy and cast multiple free spells without paying any mana whatsoever. Mystical Tutor is our next game changer and one of Blue's best tutors for an instant or sorcery, but not the only tutor. In fact, Personal Tutor exists, so does Merchant Scroll, both viable tutors for spells in Blue. They aren't as fast or efficient, but they make great substitutions. And Jin Katax's Core Augur is our next monocolored legend in the list. Jin here has wrecked many games by being discarded and reanimated early, resulting in some players that may not even have taken their first turn locked down to a single card each turn. But if you're looking for a big, nasty draw engine to help you get back up to 7 cards, then Nezahal Primal Tide is a great reanimation target that doesn't immediately die to removal and draws you as many cards as Rhystic Study without locking other players out of the game. While we're here, you let me know in the comments what is your favorite reanimation target in Magic. I love bringing back big beefy boys from the yard. On to black, starting with Bolas's Citadel, a big mana, big payoff way to chain cast cards from the top of your library by paying life rather than mana. If you're in a heavy colorless deck, then Mystic Forge works the same way, but you do have to pay mana for the spells rather than life. But surprisingly, Necropotence is not a game changer, and it is a fantastic, efficient way to pay life to refill your hand each and every turn. I'm a little shocked that this one didn't make the list because it's a great card and honestly is way too powerful for a lot of lower end decks. Demonic Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, and Imperial Seal are all black's strongest tutors, so it's no wonder these made the Game Changers list, but leaves off black's multitude of other tutors. Diabolic Intent, Mausoleum Secrets, and even Profane Tutor are all fine replacements for this effect at 2 mana. I do agree that 1 mana hard tutors probably shouldn't belong in lower powered games. Then there's Opposition Agent, one of many oppressive stacks pieces to make the list, though not one of the ones I would have thought. Lower powered games aren't doing a lot of tutoring to begin with, so Opposition Agent is much more likely to steal an Evolving Wilds activation than a Demonic Tutor. But if you want to punish searching, like land tutors in lower bracket games, then Ob Nixilis Unshackled, who punishes tutors so hard, can win you the game on its own. Our next monocolored legend is Turgid, God of Fright. So frightful that many shudder at the very mention of her, with the ability to take over a game through discard and sacrifice effects and steal everyone's stuff. But did you know that Gisa Glorious Resurrector does basically the same thing? Only with creatures, but she reanimates anything your opponents control that dies and can build your own Turgid without scaring people away from playing with you at all. Then there's Ad Nauseam, another CEDH staple. The volume of instant speed card draw this can provide is shocking, and if it resolves, you untap with basically your entire deck in your hand and it's game over. But, once again, Necropotence is not on the Game Changers list, meaning you can dump your entire life total into it and craft the best 7 cards in your deck. This one's my pick for next up on the Game Changers list, but if you're running a deck with Ad Nauseam that doesn't have Necropotence in it, I don't know what you're building. For red, we have Jeska's Will, the best ritual in the game now that Dockside Extortionist sleeps with the fish. Incidentally, also being Impulse card draw is excellent too, and both on one card really is great. But several other rituals make great includes in decks like Seething Song. For the same mana value, it will usually make you the same amount of mana, but without the extra card advantage. If you are looking for card advantage though, Stolen Strategy gets you 3 extra cards each of your turns, and can quickly let you win the game with opponents' best cards, or just deny them the chance of having them themselves. Underworld Breach rounds out Red's Game Changers by being the best graveyard recursion in the game, and certainly one of Red's best options. But Mizzix's Mastery exists and can be overloaded to win games by free casting everything in your graveyard. It's a lower power option, but it's an option. Green's Survival of the Fittest is its first entry into the list, being one of the best repeatable tutors in the game. However, Yisan the Wanderer Bard, Birthing Pod, and Fauna Shaman all still exist and all help tutor repeatedly for creatures, and none of which are on the Game Changer list. Our final monocolored legend is Vorinclex Voice of Hunger. This big beefy boy scares off a lot of players at lower power levels for the same reason as Jin-Gitaxias. Getting an early Vorinclex can lock players out of the game almost entirely. While I don't see it as a massive problem, pipe down you dies to removal players in the comments, I do think that this one is one that really warps lower powered games. If you're looking for a big green target to get out early, why not ramp yourself ahead even faster by getting a Nyxbloom Ancient instead? Then your lands all tap for 3 times as much mana while still allowing everyone else to play the game. It dies to removal too, so it's all fair, right? Then we have Gaia's Cradle, similar to Serra Sanctum in that it provides unprecedented green mana generation on a land. But we have Gaia's Cradle at home with Growing Rites of Itlimoc too. I don't know why you'd play one but not the other, but if you're looking to replace your Cradle for a more chill experience, Growing Rites flips into a Gaia's Cradle that isn't blank on an empty board. That's still a win. Before we get to the colorless cards, if you've made it this far, let me know in the comments which deck you're looking to power up or power down based on the new bracket system. Now lastly, we have some of the most broken cards in the game, colorless. These get oppressive for the fact that they can go in any deck regardless of color identity, which makes them dangerous as many have previously thought, I can put them in any deck, so I will put them in every deck, regardless of the experience you're trying to cultivate. But it's great to see that Ancient Tomb, Chrome Mox, and Grim Monolith are all relegated to higher power games only as they can throw the balance of any pod out of whack fast. So can Lion's Eye Diamond, Mox Diamond, and Mana Vault. These cards only belong in bracket 4 or 5 decks, in my opinion, and even bracket 3 decks can do without them. Instead, replace them with other mana rocks. Rely on 2 mana rocks, which we have more than enough of. Signets, Talismans, Felwar Stone, there are enough 2 mana rocks to put over 10 in most decks and not break a sweat. If you want a faster game experience that isn't bordering on unfair, then this is how you get it. But by this logic, shouldn't Soul Ring also be a game changer? We'll see about that one. Speaking of rings, we have the One Ring. This card has shown up faster in more decks than just about any other card released recently. Colorless card draw in volume with a protection effect? It's easy to see why. But what do we replace it with? Personally, I like more synergistic card draw. Idol of Oblivion for token synergies, Endless Atlas in monocolored decks, even Farsight Mask if your opponents aim to deal lots of small damage to you. There are plenty of options for colorless card draw that don't have to be the very pushed, very best cards in the game. We also have Tabernacle of Pendrell Vale on the list, which, honestly, is a bit of a laugh. Did you know that the cheapest you can get a Tabernacle for is $1,700 US? That's crazy. Even if you're proxying one, which is an option, you don't need one. This is a silly include for the list, but I understand the symbolism of it. Colorless stacks is unfun, which is why Trinisphere also makes the Game Changers. Working to make all spells at least 3 mana, the sphere sees play to help slow down smaller decks. It's on the list because it's another stacks piece that can fit in any deck. But this is where Winter Orb, Sphere of Resistance, and Static Orb all still exist outside the Game Changers. You can still be an ass in lower powered games, but don't expect to have friends afterwards. The last of our Game Changers is Glacial Chasm, the classic lands lock piece that ensures you can't take damage. On the list because, again, it can fit into any deck, but also because at lower power level games, some decks can't win if they aren't dealing damage. It's a 1-card lock on games for a lot of metas. If you're relying on it, you could always look at cards like Solitary Confinement to prevent you from taking damage, or Pillow Fort pieces like Sphere of Safety, all in white. Force Field ensures creatures can only deal 1 damage to you at a time, but you need a lot of mana to do that. It's all for the stall after all. But I'm really interested on how you are planning on upgrading or downgrading your decks based on the new bracketing system. There are a lot of options to power up or power down your favorite decks, so let me know in the comments how you're changing and shifting your favorite brews. Provide me lists, I love to look at each and every one of them. I'm personally brewing my decks for the bracket 2 level, with an upgrade to push them to bracket 3 or bracket 4, so keep an eye on upcoming decks. Hit that subscribe button now to make sure you don't miss out on any of my new brews. And if you're looking for the brackets on all of my decks, head over to my sponsor, Moxfield. Moxfield is the best deck building platform in the world and makes it easy to see all my brews all year long, all the time. With powerful search tools, you can find the best cards for your deck, and it's easy to brew to your power preference. Be sure to follow my profile while you're there. And if you're looking to pick up any cards, cheap or expensive, head over to my sponsor, Card Trader. Use my promo code right now for 5% off your first order of cards from any TCG. Their Zero system lets you order cards from multiple vendors and have them shipped to you all at once, saving you time and money on shipping. Lastly, if you're looking to sell your cards, head to Card Conduit, the easiest way to sell your cards from Magic, Pokemon, or any other game. You can ship them unsorted to Card Conduit and they'll send you a check. Easy as that. It's the quickest way to sell extra copies or just old stuff you have sitting around. Try them out now. And if you want to see any of my cool brews, check out these other videos on the channel. If you're a fan and you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, do it now. But as always folks, good luck and have fun.